Hey Ryan, how's it going?
Yeah, good on you. Good on you. I'm impressed. I actually am impressed. That was quite a nice intro thing. I hadn't expected that.
You had me sweating golf balls. You do know that.
Why do you think I wouldn't
I
come?
was like, no, I was thinking he's stuck on a call. He's picking up the kids, and
Do some
I
push-ups in the
don't know
corner.
exactly something to that effect. Or he's just doing founder stuff, you know.
I was running through tests on value, and I did almost yeah get too far into it.
Yeah, I guess this is what happens. So anyway, thanks Ryan for joining me on our fourth episode of the podcast, Founders and Builders Roller Coaster Journeys. I think we often have chats about, this real roller coaster of a journey. I think in the last couple of months we've been to the top and back to the bottom and then side tunnels and all sorts. So it's been really, really interesting. And so I thought this would be an awesome occasion to have you come and talk to us about your journey, which is an interesting one and a unique one, like every founder story. But on top of that, we do work together. I thoroughly enjoy the journey with you. So I thought this would be a perfect place to for you to have a shameless plug on what you're doing, because that's what this podcast is all about. So I guess let's kick off with a little bit of breaking the ice. I don't know if you've got a drink today. Usually, I ask my founders to bring a drink to the podcast, but if you don't, you'll owe me a
It,
drink when I'm over in London, or
that's
as you
fine.
say, a steak.
I'll owe you a steak. I prefer yeah, I'll owe you a steak instead.
You
You know what? I'm just going to turn
let's
this
go.
blur off because I think it's actually making it look a bit weird. Um, there we go. That
It's
that looks
okay.
a bit better.
Okay.
Cool.
Right. So, Ryan, you're a founder. You're also an entrepreneur. You hail from South Africa. And
Hmm.
so here's the first, I guess, question is background. Okay, childhood dreams, career path, how and how and basically how did you get to where you are as a founder? As brief as you can, because there's
As,
we dive
as,
deeper later on.
yeah, that's fine. I mean, so I was very lucky. My dad worked for an airline, so I traveled
Okay.
my whole sort of school life all over, and by doing that, I met lots of people, and I knew whatever job I did had to involve lots of people and travel and solving problems. And it's always been the way that I've looked at things. I've always taken jobs or roles or opportunities where I felt like there would be challenges and abilities to spread my wings. And I've been very fortunate, and some by design and some by luck, to be able to take roles in different parts of a business. So either be the service provider or be the client or be the consultant or whatever it is. So I feel like I've had that multi-skilled world, or I've been multi-skilled in the world of various things. So it helps me to understand the whole system, and everything I do is systematized.
Okay. So basically, there wasn't anything like as a child, ooh, this is what I'm going to do. It was just a general feeling that, this is the sort of thing that I want to feel and encounter on my journey later on in
Yeah,
life, I guess.
exactly. It's more about the process than one specific outcome. Um,
Okay. All right.
so as long as I'm learning and stretching and doing the rest of it, I'm happy to carry on pushing.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, cool. Leisure. Any hobbies or leisure activities that allow you to find yourself or recalibrate?
Yeah, look,
I love
I mean,
this question.
yeah, I mean, I joked about the push-ups in the corner, but I mean, I love to be fit and active. So, before the call, I went for a walk. I tend to walk quite a lot. I tend to go to the gym quite a lot. You know, back in South Africa, I would be playing a lot of sport. It's very difficult to do that in the UK. You know, it's quite funny. I always sort of think about this, but in South Africa, there's about 10 indoor arenas per suburb that you can go to play some sort of sport, be it action cricket, action hockey, whatever it is. Yet we have great weather most of the year. In the UK, where there's not great weather all the year, there's very little indoor sports. invented a few action arenas and stuff. It just fascinates me. But yeah, I mean, sports, reading. With young kids, so a lot of time with them when I'm not working. But as a founder and involved in two startups, you're constantly pushing something up the hill to get it over.
Okay. But I guess also it's a lot easier in South Africa because of the cost of it. I mean, there's a huge difference between being part of a country club or in a sports center in South Africa
Well,
and being in the UK, and the memberships are not the same price tag, I feel.
yeah, I hear what you're saying. Although, I think the reality is that South Africa as a nation is very sports orientated, and sport is part of your lifestyle. We were talking about it yesterday with somebody. Kids would go to school and then you'd spend 2 hours after school playing sport because the school would offer the sport. So it's part of the lifestyle. Whereas in the UK, most of the schools won't offer anything unless it's a separate club, which has a separate cost. So it becomes prohibitive for a lot of people to do it. So I think that's the model that's different. Is that physical activity is part of life in South Africa, whereas in most countries, but the UK seems to be not so much. Um,
Okay. All right. Cool. You're a dad. You've got two little ones. Tell us what it's like being a founder and a dad at the same time. So a little bit of, you
it's
know, how do you juggle the two?
so I suppose let's give it some specifics. So one is 6 and one is 3, boy and a girl in that order. The 6-year-old is the size of a 10-year-old, so he's a big, strong lad. So he's a handful when he wants to be, a physical handful. And then my daughter, who's 3, is just a force of nature. So between the two of them, it is always busy. But in that respect, I think we do right from giving them enough activities that they can burn their energy off on, enough stimulation that they are stretching their brains out.
Okay.
And then yeah, it's about trying to find the balance where you're not always working, you're not always away from them. But I think fortunately for what we do, being remote workers, is you can be at home a lot. Whereas if I was in an office in London, for example, they wouldn't see me because I'd be commuting, you know, all the
Yeah,
time. And I think we got to thank COVID for that in some respects because it kind of opened the door for a lot of
100%.
businesses just to accept that. And I mean, I was thinking about the other day, Mike, like when I was growing up, because of my dad's airline job, he was out of the country probably 2 weeks out of a month. So I grew up with him never being consistently there. And my kids have had the opposite. I've never not been here for long periods of time. So if I do need to go and do a trip for a week somewhere, that's going to be quite a shock for them. So you've got to
Yeah.
find sort of a balance between two, I think. But do what you can. Also,
Yeah.
technology's
I guess you
changed. I
take
mean,
them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go
I
ahead.
guess the thing is for us, like it's nearly a digital nomad life for you,
Mhm.
but less than what it is for us. But I guess, I know you've traveled a little bit and you just like take the family. Well, I'm going away for a week. Might as well make a sort of a holiday slash, you know, like yeah, work, but let the family benefit from the destination you're in for that week.
Yeah,
So yeah, I
100%.
quite like
And
that
and
because
and yeah, and that's where the technology is different. So when my dad was doing his traveling, I mean, I remember it used to be you had to phone the hotel, you had to know what room number he was in, so you could speak to him, and then it'd be like once a day we'd phone, and the cost of the phone call would
oh
be
yes,
heavy, and I can't remember what they
yeah,
were in rand terms, but I remember at some point that we just stopped doing the phone calls because it was just getting so expensive. Um, and nowadays because of technology, WhatsApps and FaceTime and Teams and Zoom, etc. The cost of a phone call is nothing because you're just using data.
mm,
And I mean, for us in the first world countries, data is very cheap. Even in South Africa, which is renowned for being expensive for airtime, if you're on fiber, it's fine. So even from a grandparent's point of view, the connections are there, which they wouldn't have been if 10 years ago, 15 years ago,
yeah,
living in different countries.
100%.
And you're right. I mean, we do the nomad thing fairly often. It's a bit more difficult now that my son's in school. But during COVID, we spent 15 months back in South Africa. We traveled every weekend, 1 week a month. We were somewhere different. And as long as there was internet, I could work, which was fine. So
Okay. Right. We've broken the ice, Ryan. So for those who don't know you, a little bit, getting to know who you are as a person. Let's get into the deep dive. So, daily routines. What do they look like? What's your daily routine? I know yours is a bit complicated and strange and weird because you're busy with two startups, your own plus Phoenix, one as CTO. So yeah, what does that look like? Because even I don't know, and I work with you.
yeah, no, it is full on. So I typically will get up between 3 and 4 in the morning, and
Yeah.
I will go to gym for about an hour, give or take. And that's a fairly recent change. I used to do it, funny enough, I used to do it in South Africa a lot, and then I moved to the UK, and gyms only open for the most part at 6:30 here, which is way too late. But in South Africa, you could probably get to a gym at 5 a.m. and that's great because you can be home by 7. Yeah, so normally get the gym in, and then I'm back. Depending on what time I get there, sort of 3:34, 4:30, somewhere around there. I'm usually back by 7, and it's only a 10-15 minute walk from my house. So I walk there, walk back. So I get it's actually quite nice because I do some of the stuff that I need to do for Annabelle, who does our voice notes. I do those on the walk back because usually
Yeah.
those arrive because of the time change while I'm on my way back. And what I do enjoy about it is there's no one else around at that time of the morning, really, except for the gym people.
Oh yeah.
So I get birds singing, I get nature, I get as it's getting lighter now, you get that beautiful sort of morning glow of the sun coming up.
Yeah.
Train pretty hard. I follow a pretty consistent routine around training. And then by the time I get back 7 o'clock, it's getting the kids ready for school with my wife. And then it's drop off at 8 o'clock and 8:30 for each one. And then, of course, we have our call at 8 o'clock as well.
Yeah.
So that's usually the value
Where,
call. And then from 9 o'clock till probably till about 12, 1 o'clock is usually back to back meetings, Phoenix One style. And then it's hopefully get some work done in the afternoon, unless there's more meetings. And then the kids come home between 4 and 5 o'clock. So then it's bath time and dinner time and that sort of thing. And then depending on what's going on, whether we've got a babysitter or not, my wife and I might go out, or I'll put the kids to bed, or she'll put the kids to bed, and then I'll start working again till about 11, 12 most nights.
okay.
And if I'm not working, then I'm reading. And I try and read as much as I try to read every night for at least 20 minutes, something, but
Okay.
usually I'm working on something or finishing off something. That's a typical
Okay.
24
So
hours.
you get by with very little sleep because if you're going to bed at 11, 12, you're up at 3, between 3 and 4. That's very little sleep. So do you find that from time to time you need a 10-hour night occasionally or a
Yeah.
12-hour night kind of scenario and it just
um,
happens naturally? Or
yeah,
how does
sometimes
that
it does.
work?
Like last night, I had one of those. We got home at about 10, and I slept going to bed, and then I woke up at 6, and that was it. And nothing would have woken me. Nothing wakes me up. I mean, it's quite funny because I went to bed in my bed, and I woke up in my son's bed, and I don't remember moving because he sometimes comes and wakes me up. But
Okay.
often, I mean, I can go through those periods for probably 6, 7 weeks
Yeah.
before I need it. But I also do meditate. I didn't mention that, but usually I'll go down, I'll lie down for 10, 15 minutes and meditate throughout the day. So you get
Okay.
it's called polymorphic sleeping.
Yeah.
To try to sleep on a regular schedule, but small amounts. And I do that usually when there's a stressful period. Like now, stressful. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things to keep going. So I'll do it.
Mhm.
But then it does catch up with you at some point. And I monitor everything. I've got an Aura ring which monitors all my vitals. So I watch that quite a lot. And if that tells me that you know, my recovery's not good or whatever it is, then I typically don't train as hard. I'll tend to do a lot of walking then instead of training. But that's where the data helps to sort of suss out where you are and
Oh,
what you need to do.
okay. Sometimes I wonder about, monitoring health. So I used to have one of the watches to monitor heart rate and everything, and I don't know whether it was because of a lack of accuracy, but I ended up being really obsessed and continuously looking at it and saying, like, hang on a minute, like my heartbeat, there's no way in hell my heartbeat's pumping up that much, and and it just became like horrible. So I just like, and I spent some time with the family, and my mom just said, like, why you wear those silly things? You're perfectly okay. Throw it away. And so literally, like, end of hypochondriac behavior as soon as I stopped wearing the watch. It was horrible because all of a sudden things would, and then I'd send a message to my wife and say, like, I think I'm not feeling okay, and yeah, I'm coming home. Just not okay, and it just like, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah,
So getting back, okay. So you wake up at 3, 4 o'clock. Do you use an alarm, or are you like me where it's natural wake up
I mean, I have an alarm, but often I'm turning the alarm off before it goes off. Um,
before? Okay.
and I normally set one alarm for 4 o'clock and one alarm for 5 o'clock, just in case. But usually I'm walking to the gym door when the 5 o'clock alarm goes off,
Okay.
and I don't turn them off prematurely. I let them go off because it's kind of like a brain thing. It just, the second alarm's coming, so then I'm on track with the day. I should be at gym when that second alarm goes off.
Okay. All right. Okay. Fair enough. Geez, now that I know that you're up at 5, because for me it's 10 to 5 is when I wake up. But for that to happen, I need to fall asleep before 11 p.m. So that's my routine. And then from time to time, I need that long sleep, or I get a migraine, and my body says, like, it's time to get a little bit of a rest and time off the screen. So
Hmm?
that's my little routine. But now that I know you're up at 5, I guess we can get some stuff done, because between 5 and 7 is when I get work done, because there's no interruptions whatsoever from anyone else. And if I'm going to do any physical activity and meditation, it's during everyone else's breakfast time. So there's no, interruption either.
Yeah, I
So
wish I had that
that's,
opportunity, but by the time things get going, things get going. And
yeah,
the reason why
exactly.
I switched the gym to in the morning was that because of meetings and stuff like that, you just don't get there. Um,
Okay.
so that has to be the first thing, and then you finish gym first, so you've got something achieved for the day,
Yeah.
which is also important. So
Okay. Cool. Right. Let's do something more interesting. So what, well, not more interesting, but what have you developed before? So what projects have you been involved with? And tell us a little bit of backstory that led to where we are now with Value Workspace.
yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky, like I said, in my career to done a lot of stuff. It goes back to even in high school, in primary school, building stuff on my own, learning how to code and write little apps and sell apps and that sort of thing. And I mean, I would probably talk more about my Microsoft career because that's really where things got really interesting. So in 2000, I joined a company called Mint, and we were building the global intranet for one of the large paper companies using a product called SharePoint and content management server, which now is part of one product, as in SharePoint, what it is today. And I was involved with that from the beginning with the workflow technology called K2. And it was one of those projects that literally slept in our chairs, slept underneath desks, worked 7 days a week, etc., etc. And I was studying a degree at the same time, and I ended up actually dropping out of that degree to carry on working on this project
Okay.
because we were just doing something that I just felt at the time. I had that feeling like this would be the career making project, and I still think it has been even today. I mean, we're talking 24 years later to how much that project taught me about so many things, from how to architect something to testing environments, how do you build them, how do you roll things out, change management, various things. So that's probably, and then that won a few awards as well for the enterprise search capability that now is inside of SharePoint. It didn't exist at the time. I didn't build that piece, but obviously part of the project you learn about all these things. With that, I moved into a more consultative business, which was around business process management and case management. So if you think about business process management like railway tracks, well, with stations, a process has to flow, and you can't go past the station. You've got to go through the station, and then you take the next signal, you go left to right. That's a business process. Whereas case management is much more flexible in that you have an object. Think of an object like a car, another object like a driver, And when the driver and the car are together, they're related. And if you have a structured process, which, like, for example, you have a car accident, that'll go through a structured process like an insurance claim. So you can still have structured processes, but they're not as rigid as this process world. And that's pretty much how my brain is wired as well, which is why I enjoyed that sort of stuff, because you could find all these problems and you were solving them using connected bits of information with relationships and measurements and process. And about that, around the time that I was doing all the sort of people process and I mean, the other one, the technology came out as a sort of phrase that was being used. And when I moved over from being on the sort of client service provider and system integrator side and vendor into the client side, when I moved to JP Morgan and then UBS, a lot of those concepts that I'd worked with and solved for building solutions was how I internally solved problems. And most of those problems were using data in smart ways, which would now be called machine learning and all that kind of stuff, to automatically solve problems. So fix desktop issues predominantly. And with large real estates, this is around end user experience. How do we detect a problem and then fix it automatically, and then learn from that fix so that the next time it happens, we can fix it again without having to intervene manually. And that sort of, went into other sort of projects where I use the same sort of mechanisms over and over again to solve problems. If I fast forward a little bit to most recently, probably the last 2 years, it's been around how do we take what I've developed as a process and systematize it. And that process works for project management, works for product management. It's all about sequencing and prioritization and measuring the value of what you're doing. And that's where Value Workspace came from as a product. And I'll be honest, the initial version of it was actually meant to be a big calculator that calculated the return on value.
Okay.
But when I was working with a client through it, I realized through how we were struggling to work together that there needed to be a framework that lined up with it. Because initially I didn't want to dictate that you had to use Prince2 or PMBOK or OKRs or whatever it was to do your project, but you had to measure it. But through this exercise of trying to figure it out, I realized that you have to pick something. You have to have something that delivers the work that we can measure.
Yeah.
And I've always been a big fan of OKRs, so that's what we did. We reversed course a little bit, and we decided to build the OKR piece in, and that's become the fundamental part of the product. And that's tied with the other pieces, which are the value quadrant and the Assure piece, which is around governance and risk management.
Okay. So
Uh,
reflecting on your experience, and how has that really helped you with Value Workspace, which is what you're building at this point in time. So reflect, how did that shape the way you think and how you're actually building out the product, I guess.
Well, I think it comes down to work, and I actually wrote this as an equation that work is equal to people, process, and technology, and then I actually derived a mathematical formula. This is going back to the very beginning, because what I was finding is whenever you go into a project, and often where I get pulled into something is that everything's broken or it's a mess, and someone needs to come and fix it. And this could be a conversation on the golf course. This could be a client referring me to somebody else, or whatever it is. And often what it comes down to is understanding what the work is that needs to happen, in what order, and who needs to do it. And all around all of that is why do you need to do it? What is the value proposition? So when I was doing a lot of advisory work and consulting, that's often what I'd be coming in and asking those questions and formulating a plan, and then providing an output that basically made it very easy for an end user to realize what the priority work was and what an order should be done in and what the value was. And through that, we've built the product. We built the methodology first because I was using it anyway. And then we prototyped it a few times in Notion. And I realized that as great as Notion is, and I still love the product, it has a few limitations that are very frustrating and very irritating. And that kind of led me down the road of building a product to solve the problem, which has had some other problems associated with, which we can always talk about. But yeah, I mean, that's where we are now.
Okay. So target market in an ideal scenario? Who is your software for? Who is Value Workspace for?
I think it's. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think there's two pools,
You know why I'm
and
asking this.
I'm gonna get into trouble for this part. So I think, I mean, it's designed for the end customer, and I know you're gonna, yeah, there we go. But actually, the sweet spot is the advisory consultant people. And you know, if you look at all that advice about when you build something, build it for your own itch. Every time I have a conversation now to go and do some consulting, I'm using our own tool as part of that conversation. They get it, you know, they're getting it as part of the deal for free for the first year. And we've priced it deliberately for the basic thing to be quite a small price, because the idea is
Yeah.
that I want people to keep it. I want them to use it forever. I don't want them ever to go and say this is too expensive for the value we get out of it. And we've also priced it with unlimited users because we want people to collaborate. And we want them to not be penalized for adding more users to the platform. And part of that also is that everyone that gets access to the tool, up to 3 users, can use it for free. Now, that sounds maybe a little bit too good to be true, but I think the idea behind that is that we want it to be valuable to them, that they use it
100%.
and they feel like they need it to be successful. From a consulting point of view and an advisory point of view, the reason why I think that's a sweet spot is really what value is an expert system. It's there to capture knowledge and then to reuse that knowledge to help in the next initiative, the next project. And we do that through templates and we do that through scenarios. So a template is what you think it is. If we've got an OKR template, we'll give you the objectives, we'll give you the key results. Something we will do in the future is we'll make it large language model supported. So we'll use something like ChatGPT or Bard or whichever one. I haven't decided which one I want to use yet, but you can use that to generate your templates. And we're trying to make it as easy for users as possible to get to the work. And this kind of feeds into the second part, which is scenarios. And the scenario is really where the knowledge is. So in my sort of preferred space, which is either information security or end user experience, a scenario is a problem and a solution, but I'll have a list of problems that I've seen before, and I'll have a description of what that problem is, and then I'll have a solution, which will be a plan. And that plan is really task level. So the sort of easy one that I normally talk about is running out of disk space. That's the problem. What does it do to a user? Well, if they run out of disk space, they can't store anything. The operating system normally shuts down because it can't do anything, and your user loses productivity. So its value proposition is increasing productivity, and your offset is what does it cost to buy a bigger hard drive or to do a disk cleanup? And that's usually where your plan comes in. What is your plan to remediate this issue? So the plan in this case is very simple. You need to monitor all your devices for storage. And I'm talking about a real estate here of a few hundred to a few thousand to a few 100,000 users. You're constantly looking at how much storage they have available. You can do some intermediary things like educating your users not to store a lot of stuff they don't need on their disk, reduce the size of their profile, whatever the basic sort of educational things are. So that you need to empower your users firstly. The second thing you can do is have an automated or semi-automated disk cleanup script. So automated means it runs automatically once a day or based on a trigger. Semi-automated means that when it reaches a certain threshold, the user is prompted to run that script, which should have a nice experience when they do it. It shouldn't look like something that's been coded in the back of a garage. It, should look nice and slick. But you're empowering the user either way. And then the last thing to do is to just increase the size of the hard drive. And what happens typically with machines that go through a life cycle is they would have, when they're buying the devices, someone would have estimated what they thought they needed, which may not be enough as time goes by, and it's time to upgrade and double. And usually, what you're looking at there is from a return on value point of view, which is where value comes in as part of calculating the ROV, is what does it cost to automate the disk cleanup? What does it cost to educate the user? And what is the productivity increase that you're getting back? And we have a formula that works it out based on hourly rates and time impacted and all that kind of stuff. And in the case of replacing a hard drive, what does it cost to replace the hard drive as the actual cost? So let's say it costs $100. And if it was the labor might cost you $25, $30 on top, so call it 130. what is the return on value or the productivity increase to that user? And you can, offset one versus the other. And that was really the genesis of the product in the end user experience point of view. And I was doing the same thing with information security. What's the cost of your risk if you don't have information security in place? So if you don't put in controls around sharing data using a shared tool like OneDrive or Dropbox or whatever it is. So hopefully that explains it a bit.
It does, and I know a better way to actually show what you mean, you know. So it's what we call the demo time.
Cool.
So I guess this is, I'm familiar with the product. I love the product. This is what brought us together. It made sense from my perspective as an agency and consultant and advisor. It just
Yep.
like ticked all the boxes of what we need. So here's the time to showcase it live. We've got, geez,
Great.
22 people. We've never been this high before. So this is good. So normally you should be able to share your screen
I'm just picking the
whenever you're
screen.
ready.
So I've hit the share button. Can you see my shared screen?
Yep.
Yep, there we go.
There we go.
Okay,
Perfect.
so I'm showing the vision board first, and we'll come back to the home screen in a bit. But I started here because this is probably the most important part of the product at this stage. And as I mentioned, we use OKRs. And what we've done here, I was just playing with some ones before this meeting, is we've put in some tasks, a key result, and 2 objectives. And this is, where we are planning out what we're going to be doing around our own internal stuff to increase the adoption of the product. We have the ability to set priority, have a status. It's very important for me that you always have an owner of something who's accountable. And then we also tie in our assurance piece, which is our governance as part of this. So it's an interconnected system. And you can see that on the left-hand side here, we've got vision, which is OKRs specifically in the quadrant, and we'll talk through that. We have Desk, which is our ticket analysis tool, which is part of our end user experience approach. We have scenarios, which are problem solutions. We have assurance, which is our governance. Sequencing, which is a new piece of functionality that we're building out. So it's still in a bit of 50-50 state. But the idea is that when you have a lot of objectives, you might have an order of sequence that you need to follow to achieve those objectives. And that's where sequencing comes in. And we're using that as a way to publish a roadmap for a thing. And this goes back to the advisor and the consultant. And even to some extent, I was looking at it being applied in the software as a service business, where you are trying to get a renewal done. How do you show, in order to get that renewal, you have to show value continuously. And this goes back to our scenarios and our templates, where you can use the templates to define your objectives that are repeatable. And then you can use the scenarios as a way to point out key things you're going to do to deliver. So we have this piece here. What we can do, what we have as well, which is part of our quick entry mechanism, is a scratchpad. And we're enhancing this at the moment, where you can basically type in a task or type in a key result, type in an objective, and it'll go and create those for you in the tool. And part of that was this piece where we're saying if you didn't allocate a task to something, you can drag it in and add it to the list so that it has a parent. So this is pretty straightforward initiative management functionality. You can set timelines. We have a Kanban board, which obviously you can play around and drag forward and backwards. That can be shown also at a key result level. And you can see I've got some key results from these ones are from the other objective. And then I've got task level as well. And these can all be dragged around and played around as you go. So this is all stuff that we've been adding this last couple of weeks. And then really the key thing that I would normally talk to a customer about is the value quadrant. And the value quadrant is, how do we decide what work is the most important work to be done? And we do this by different return on value formulas that we have: productivity, cost saving, risk mitigation, and revenue. And ideally, what we're trying to do here is provide a way for them to decide from each perspective what they want to tackle. And these can be moved around as well. We can, drag it to here or there. And the idea behind this is that you've got a timeline to when you should focus on something, and then the value is also, relative to what's important, or should just be kicked down the road as you go. And then there's some stuff that obviously will sit in the parking lot or in the long-term sort of bucket. And long-term bucket is sort of 12 to 24 months, and the quick wins are the sort of 0 to 6 months period, which is the immediate things. And we try and keep these to a small amount. And even business as usual is kind of the things if I go back to my hard drive example, you may not go and replace all your hard drives at once, but you replace them as and when they come up. So they'll meet criteria like 80% storage utilized, for example, and you'll just go and replace those as they come up. It's not got a high value to it because you're not doing 10,000 users at one go. You might be doing onesie, twosies a week, which would be a low value in that 1 to 2 per week. But at the end of the year, that's 104 users that you've probably save their productivity on, which would give you a productivity return. So that's the quadrant. And then we have the Gantt chart, which, as you would expect, is a timeline. We're still working on this one as well, but it gives you a view of what's coming on in sequence. And then from a scenarios point of view, as I mentioned, I haven't put any scenarios in for this today. I was busy with something else, trying to get the vision stuff to look nice. But here is your scenarios. This is a problem we have with Active Directory. It locks out. We would put in a problem description. We use a rating system, which puts it into the quadrants. We can put this into a focus area, which would be end user experience. We can add some reasoning. Users can't work if this doesn't work. So this helps to justify why you would do this stuff. So if I go back to my end user experience consultancy hat,
100%.
which I'm currently putting together, I'm writing scenarios where I'm explaining why this is important to the customer, why they need to care about this. And this is often where an internal person can't always articulate the value to their own management, sort of lineage to get the budget to go and run a project because they don't have the information. But if you come in as a consultant and you've got the information, then you're arming them to be successful. And that's really the crux of it for me. Because we're dealing with different types of, I'm turning them off, I need them on. And then I can add my actions here. What are my actions for this? Which could either be task or steps. And where we're enhancing this is that we use certain tools in the end user experience world. So we can actually link to that tool as well. So in the case of the running our disk space example, we might say, go and check this website, which will be an internal tool. And it'll give you a list of all the users that are impacted with low disk space. So it helps you to make it an immersive system. And then we can have measures. So if we're going to count how many tickets are associated to this, and we can link it to a key result or an objective. And this gives us a sort of roll-up experience where we're measuring maybe a key result and its impact. Let's say the key result is to address disk space issues. We want to roll up all our initiatives to see what does that affect the whole objective. And this is how we work out the return on value for that initiative. And then we're also going to benchmark. So we're going to pull data in on a regular basis and say, okay, on the 1st of January, your ticket volume for this was 10,000 tickets. At the end of the first quarter, so 1st of April, we pull the data again and we see that it was 10,000, now it's gone to 20,000. You've got a bigger problem that's brewing and you've done nothing about the problem. So then in Q2, we go and do something about it, which could be notifications or desktop, could be ordering new hard drives, doing replacements, whatever the action is that you take. You then pull your data again at the start of the next quarter, which would be the 1st of July, and you see your tickets have gone down, maybe by 5,000. So instead of getting 20,000, now you've got 15,000 that have come through. Now, tickets are one measurement that we would use. The other measurement would be our EUM tool. So whichever one we're plugging into, we'd get the data from that as well. So we're going to track both tickets and actual data and see if and this is the crux of it, the action that we've taken, has it made a difference or not? By putting in a notification for the user or an automatic cleanup for the user or replacing their hard drives, has that reduced the number of tickets? Has that reduced the number of devices that are affected with low disk space? And that's a return on value. And then the one tool that we use, they calculate a health score with a disk impact. We would look at that as well. And that disk impact takes into account in a working week, in a working 40-hour week or 168-hour month, how much percentage of that time has this user been impacted by the amount of disk that they don't have? And then you can work that out and take that by an hourly rate and say, okay, for 10,000 users at $100, we've lost 1,000 hours. That's $100,000 worth of lost productivity. It's not a hard money in the bank return,
No.
but if you can improve the perception of your infrastructure, your technology infrastructure with your users, which are your customers, and make them more productive, they will, in theory, make the business more profitable. So that's where the productivity then comes into it. So, I mean, this is a very high level run through of that. And then we have Assure, where we would add risks. And this is really a tracker. And this comes back from many years of running projects and working with guys with Excel spreadsheets and having an Excel spreadsheet for risks and an Excel spreadsheet for dependencies and an Excel spreadsheet for issues and da 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 da. This is one place to track it all. And we're tracking everything from obviously risk assumption issues and dependencies, but also support tickets that you've logged, evidence of things that you've proved that you've done. So if you're going to do an information security audit, you'd have evidence of that. Any questions that have come up, and then any requirements that have come up. And we use Moscow must have, should have, could have, and won't have as a criteria for anything that's logged. And this is to help, again, drive an initiative to be successful, because that's really what this is about in the end, is that we want people to be successful. Now, the part that I haven't mentioned is that all of this that I'm showing you is part of a workspace. And what is a workspace? It's the collection of all the things together. So I would, go back to the sort of initiative analogy, the workspace is a logical grouping of something you're doing. So whether it's the project or you're doing end user experience as a concept, you probably put that in a workspace. And you can have multiple workspaces. You can have workspaces that are all on the same level, or you can have workspaces that inherit as children of the main workspace. So if you're doing an end user experience program or project across multiple countries, for example, or multiple regions, you might have a parent workspace with two children, one for the North America and one for the UK, and then one for Europe. And they can all inherit from the parent. Now, the reason why we would do that is we want to roll the data back up and see all the objectives, see all the measurements, see all the benchmarking in one big picture, but then also allow for different things to happen in different regions because they might have different plans or different needs to address, etc. So we bring some level of commonality, but also give a level of flexibility. Now, where that's really interesting for a consultant or an advisory business is they could have workspaces per client, and they can share their templates and their scenarios with their clients. So if I develop a scenario for the out of disk space issue, and I have 6 clients using 6 of my workspaces, they would all get that scenario to leverage, which this goes back to our knowledge and our expert system, sharing the information. So you can have as many and that's how we build. We build our workspaces. So our plans are all based on how many workspaces you're going to have, not how many users. So I don't really want to ever limit the customer to number of users. I just want to make sure that they've got a logical place that they can have for their projects. And then we also have with that you can have a sub company, for example, with its own set of workspaces. So there's the ability to separate as well if you need to. So I think we've covered good ways of protecting data and but still allowing for flexibility and collaboration for the people involved.
Okay. Perfect. I think that sums it up
and
pretty
then,
well.
Yeah, and then the last thing, which is I like this picture, I just don't like the colors, to be honest, is we have a grid that measures counts the risk and issues by probability and severity. So a lot of the stuff, what I want to get to as well, probably just give a bit of vision, is that if you're running a project or an initiative, you're not wasting time generating a PowerPoint deck to update on your project. You should be able to do it from within the tool, so that you could show your risk profile, you can show your vision status, and you can show your sequence. I'll show the sequencing tool but it's still early days. The idea behind this, as I mentioned, is you're going to have your objectives. You're going to pick them. You can have them stage by stage. So I've just picked the 2. You can see the key results have been pulled through. If we had selected some scenarios, we'd have a value proposition, and here you could write your update. So on this day, we've updated, this is what's happened, and this should be an audit log of what's happened with the project. So if you're working with a customer, and remember, this is again inside a workspace, so you might have a customer that you're working on to make their app go live, or whatever it is, they would have access to this too, and they can come look at this roadmap and see where they are, what's going on at a very high level. This is meant to be the executive level of what's going on. And then we can mark things, success, completed or not. So that's been ticked off or unticked because it's not done yet. And you can see a status update that, again, is executive friendly. And that's it.
Perfect.
Simple.
So very, very simple. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, and the basis is like what I liked about it is the fact that the model is per workspace, and from a consultant's perspective, it's I've got a client, I need to work on a project with him, and deal and open up a workspace that I have with him, but then that client will then inherit that workspace and then maybe use and hopefully use actually the tool internally, and then have value workspace and then have their own then workspaces for different departments, projects, etc., etc. So that's one of
100%.
the great elements that I found like so attractive with the product. And also putting the return on value is also putting an actual number to it, because that's also something that's always very difficult to do as a consultant. It's like, yeah, you want to do this for me, but what's the value? And if you're not talking in dollar amounts, it makes it difficult
Yeah, and
to process or understand, or to make or to actually take the decision and execute on them.
correct. And I mean, we use the dollar, and to go back to the homepage, maybe that's an important piece. So if you remember our quadrant at the beginning, we had the quadrant. We've basically summarized it to these 4 blocks here. So your homepage, when you come in, will tell you where you're tracking around your return on value. I've set these to 0 because we haven't put any value in yet. There's my objectives. I've got a sort of status view. And then what will happen over time is this will get filled out with tasks that are due, or objectives, key results. So you can start tracking, what am I doing, what am I involved in. And we want to make this the interactive part where it's a very easy place to come and check out what's going on, and then drill into the work that you have to do. But that's where I would like, as users use it, I'd like to get feedback to what they would like to see and use on this page. I'd actually like to make this a completely customizable page. They can pick the widgets they want to make their own workbench, very much like you would with SharePoint, for example.
Okay, fantastic. So just to let everybody know, we'll be dropping in the details to be able to come and test the MVP, because that's where we're at this point in time. So you can either actually just sign up for yourself and work your way around it, or through the website. There's Will's going to share the handles at the end so that people can actually book a demo with you, so that you can do something that's a bit more customized for whoever would like to have a go and test Value Workspace. Right. A couple of fun questions, moving on to something a bit lighter after the intellectual side of things. Right. So, fun facts. I'd like to know how much time you spend on screens for non-work related things.
Probably 10%, 20% of my time.
Cool. Bucket list item to tick off in 2024.
I think it's this. If I launch Value Workspace this year and it gets traction, that'll be the bucket list thing.
All right. 10-day hunting retreat or 10-day coding retreat?
I'm not a big one for hunting, but I wouldn't mind 10 days of fishing.
Okay, that answers the question. Beach house holiday or mountain cabin getaway?
Oh, mountain cabin.
Good. Do you rock a hoodie and sneakers, or a suit and tie for client meetings?
Halfway in between, I guess.
Okay, smart casual, I guess. It's cheating. But
Yeah.
anyway, you got to pick one. Come on, pick your team.
I not a hoodie, but I will wear sneakers and jeans and a nice shirt, but I don't really wear a hoodie that much.
Okay. Coffee or tea, and what kind?
Definitely coffee. I'm going through Kenya at the moment. Um, so that's probably the main one. And there's a Colombian one there as well, but it's mostly Kenyan.
Okay, great. So, comedy club night or TED Talk marathon for a fun evening out? What's your pick to unwind?
Comedy club.
Comedy club. Okay. I guess we'd be going to see what's his name? Oh, I've got a blank. South African,
Oh,
famous. Now
Trevor
he's
Noah.
American. Trevor. Trevor.
Yeah.
Come on. Trevor. It could be a
You
good
know,
night out.
the funny story about around Trevor Noah is he was actually at school with me. He was a year behind
Oh
me at
wow.
school. Yeah.
Jeez.
No one. I
Oh,
mean,
that's a
it's funny how you never think of someone as what they'll be in their future.
was he not funny at school?
Oh, I think he was. So we used to stand. I mean, it's quite funny. I mean, we're literally within 10 meters, not even 10 meters, 5 meters of each other. We'd be like two groups of guys. You know, the guy circles chatting to each other. He'd be in one group, we'd be in another. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure he was telling stories even then that were funny because his mates would be laughing. But you know, never sort of see him have the success that he's had. I mean, it's
What
great
a
to
journey.
have seen. Yeah, and I remember taking my wife to see him at Gold Reef City in Johannesburg for one night,
Okay.
and even I think it was his Daywalker series, and even saying then that I can't believe that he made it, let alone he, hosting a successful American talk show.
Yeah. Indeed. Indeed. Last question. Sports, where would you thrive? Single competitor, double sports, relay team, or team sport?
I prefer the team sports. I mean, in fact, I'm trying to get back into them now.
Would have touch rugby?
Touch rugby, hockey, softball.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Well, and now we move on to the wrap up. So I don't know if there are any questions on the floor from those who are live for Ryan around his product and his journey. So if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to drop them in the comments. We'll wait for a minute or so, and otherwise that'll be a wrap. Also, Ryan, do you have a giveaway for anybody who's listening in?
Well, I would say the giveaway is to go and use the product. Because at this stage we want people using it as much as possible so they can have access to all the
Right.
features and functionality before we start locking it down. Um,
All right. Sounds good. So no comments yet, but I guess that'll be a wrap. Ryan, thanks a lot for joining me on the podcast. Thanks for your journey and also a great product. And let's hope that it gets some traction. This is recorded, so we'll be sending you a copy of this and for your use. We'll be putting it up onto YouTube, and it'll be live and recorded on X. So yeah, thanks a lot, Ryan.
Perfect.
It's been a
Super.
pleasure,
Thanks for having
and
me.
it's been a pleasure likewise. And yeah, we'll catch you probably over the weekend.
It's great stuff. Thanks everyone. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers, Ryan. Have a good one. Take care.
Bye.